My name is Susan Harris, and I am the Rural Health, Wellness, and Safety Educator with University of Nebraska Extension. I also work with the Agribility Project there. You see that little logo. But ultimately, I deal with a lot of all-terrain vehicle safety, sleep deprivation, and mental health in Nebraska, which is exactly what Emily was talking about in our keynote. Okay, so let's get started. Sleep deficiency is now officially identified as a public health problem. That's by the World Health Organization and the CDC. Sleep is not like a bank account that you can take from and then put back later. Those of us who like to sleep in on the weekends, that it's not a good thing. It's not helping you because each night that you lose some valuable sleep, you are depriving your body of some really essential functions that we are going to talk about. And if you'd like to, I'd like to know how much sleep everybody got last night. Mine was not great. In the chat box, maybe go ahead and put how many hours, and we'll kind of compare those later. So at this age, it's pretty cute. It's just not as cute at our age. And why is it a big deal? Because people with insomnia can experience excessive daytime sleepiness, difficulty concentrating, increased risk for accidents and illness, and a significantly reduced quality of life overall. And I hate to tell you this, but it gets worse with age. One of the main symptoms that we all have is daytime sleepiness, but sometimes that sleepiness manifests itself in other ways, like memory loss or difficulty concentrating, and you might be irritable or depressed or confused. And all of these things we might not associate back to having a lack of sleep, but it absolutely could be. One more thing I would like to mention is that those symptoms that I just mentioned could also be caused by dehydration. So it's really important to, if you're having those kinds of feelings, think about, okay, did I sleep well last night? And have I had enough water to drink today? Very important. So what if you saw this ad? Scientists have discovered a revolutionary new treatment that makes you live longer. It enhances your memory. It makes you more creative. It makes you look more attractive. It keeps you slim and lowers food cravings. It protects you from cancer and dementia. It wards off colds and the flu. It lowers your risk of heart attacks and stroke, not to mention diabetes. You'll even feel happier, less depressed, and less anxious. It's free. Is anybody interested? Heck yeah, if that was free and they deliver it to your doorstep, I think we would all jump on that in an instant. Now, in other programs, when I throw this slide up and I read that and I say, okay, now what do you think we're talking about? And everybody says exercise, eating right. Nobody thinks about sleep, but guess what? Of course it's sleep, yes. The magic pill is sleep. It's like an umbrella that protects us in all of these areas of our life. Lack of quality sleep is associated with the opposite of these things: diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, depression, even obesity, and more stress, by the way. Our stress is only emphasized even more when we don't sleep enough. Ability to learn is really effective, and this is something we're going to talk about with kids in a second here. But there's this process called consolidation that cements things into your brain when you when you learn them. And so you sleep on it, so to speak, and you retain that memory or that thing that you learned. Whereas if you don't sleep on it, things that you learn can just fly out of your head. It strengthens your memory, it strengthens your practice skills and your emotions, so many things that I don't have time to go into. Physical health, of course, is also affected. We all tend to think about our energy level being affected, but it also affects all of these other things. Immunity, this is something to really consider these days, is definitely enhanced by sleeping. It's like this overnight cleaning crew that flushes toxins out of your brain. This is the only process that does it for your brain, by the way. This is why we need to have sleep. But then it also goes down into our physical selves, and it repairs nerves, it repairs muscles that have been torn during the day, it repairs organs, it just keeps everything in balance. Also, it affects our safety, our coordination, our judgment, our executive function is all affected if we don't have enough sleep. And especially in the farming or in the ag industry, this can be a life or death situation if we make poor judgments and if we're klutzes on the farm. So let's start with our children. Children at this age who sleep less than about 8 hours a night are more likely to be hyperactive and act out, bounce off the walls, have these ADHD-like symptoms, when really it could just be a lack of sleep. So 70% of parents think that their children are getting enough sleep, but guess what? Only about 25% of them really are. And this is because I think a lot of parents don't understand how many hours a child is supposed to have in order to get the benefit of sleep. So I like to emphasize this slide because I want you to think about it. If you have a child who has ADHD-like symptoms and you took them to the doctor and the doctor handed you the Adderall or the Ritalin, which by the way are two drugs that we know keep us awake, adults and children, more than any other drugs, reconsider it. Think about their sleep, how much sleep they're getting, their sleep hygiene. Think about other alternatives before that. And a doctor should be asking that question, but unfortunately many doctors don't ask that question. Adolescent youth on farms are 2 to 3 times more likely to get injured if they sleep less than 9 hours and 15 minutes per night. Again, 70% of parents think that our kids are doing okay. And many parents think that 8 hours is the magic number, even for our teenagers and our middle schoolers, but it's not. Ages 10 to 18 truly need at least 9 to 10 hours and preferably closer to the 10, even 11 hours of sleep. Not having it can bring on emotional problems, bullying, drug addictions. Just there are so many things that kids can get involved with, and it could just be a lot of it a result of not getting enough sleep. This is the sad statistic. 69% of high school students report sleeping 7 hours or less. Oh my gosh, that just breaks my heart, because as adults, you know, we shouldn't even be doing that, but especially they should not be doing that. The sad fact is that their melatonin kicks in later in the day. So, you know, if you have a teenager, you think they're lazy, really, their melatonin doesn't kick in until later. They don't want to go to bed until later at night because their biological system is telling them to do that. They also want to sleep in the morning, which is why getting up early and going to school or doing early chores is just killer for them. Data from the past century suggests that over 750 kids aged 5 to 18 were studied, and they are sleeping 2 hours less than kids did 100 years ago. 2 hours less. Adults are sleeping an hour and a half less than we did 50 years ago. That's within my lifetime. Boggles my mind that we've changed that much. But here's the map. So from the CDC, you look at where you live on this map, and if you are in a darker area, that means your area is having trouble sleeping more than 7 hours per night. And the lighter areas, it's still 1 in every 3 or 4 people who are not sleeping enough. The interesting thing about this map is that if you go to the CDC's website and you overlay their obesity map with this map, they are essentially the same thing, which again brings me back to that first umbrella slide that I showed you about how sleep impacts obesity and our health, so many different areas of our life, and yet so overlooked by so many people. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration reports that there are approximately 100,000 police-reported crashes that involve drowsy driving each year. Now, unfortunately, there is no sleepalizer test like there's a breathalyzer test. So this is just estimated, and we don't know how many people, you know, didn't admit to being sleepy when they had a crash. This is something that I want you to consider if you're ever getting in a vehicle. So being awake for 15.84 hours is the beginning of what's called executive dysfunction. That just means you are not doing your basic things as well as you normally do them, behaviorally, emotionally. After 18 hours of being awake, it's the same as having a blood alcohol content of 0.05%. At 21 hours, it's like having blood alcohol content of 0.08, which is our legal intoxication level in Nebraska. And if you pull an all-nighter, you are wasted. So I beg you, don't get in a car, don't get in a combine, don't get any kind of a vehicle, and urge your kids to do the same, especially if they have not slept well. They should not be driving. I just love this slide. It's so true, isn't it? We are a reactive society. We are not a proactive. And most of us do turn to pills for answers. And no matter how many times I do this program, inevitably I am asked about pills or melatonin, or, you know, what about this option? I will answer that question later about melatonin, because I'm guessing people want to know, but I don't talk about pills as an option, because they can do all of this. They can cause next day drowsiness, like a hangover effect. They can turn you into a klutz, you know, putting you right back in the position that you were trying to avoid in the first place. Also dizziness, constipation. In the case of some prescription medications, it says right on the label, this may cause you to get up and do things during the middle of the night that you won't remember in the morning. And there are many, many stories of people, especially night eating, that's a popular one, shopping on Amazon and then having something delivered to their door, not remembering ordering it, and then driving and actually causing death because they had a sleeping pill. And mostly it's not real sleep. It's blocking neurotransmitters in your brain that need to do their job, and it's not allowing you to have the kind of sleep that you should have. So this is allergy season. This slide is, I don't know, pretty appropriate right now, especially for me. This is about the day. Seriously, August 15th actually is the day that my allergies usually start kicking in. So most of us have Benadryl in our cupboards for that, right? Well, here's the deal. This is a box of Benadryl and a box of a nighttime sleep aid, a sleeping pill from Walmart. If you turn them over, guess what? They are exactly the same thing. Diphenhydramine hydrochloride, 25 milligrams. Both of them. One's pink, one's blue, same exact ingredient, same exact dosage. However, you'll notice one calls itself an antihistamine, one calls itself a nighttime sleep aid. That's marketing for you. So I just want you to be aware of that. So you're not taking this first thing in the morning, you're only taking it in the evening when you don't have to drive, because ultimately, if you are taking Benadryl, you're taking a sleeping pill. Here's another bit of advice from a pulmonologist that I talked to. He said, avoid decongestants or other stimulants at night, or anything with a D in it. And wow, there are a lot of things with D in it. I checked it out the other day at the drugstore. I couldn't believe it. Lots more than Claritin. So for allergies this season, take these things early in the day, because they are just meant to, or they will kind of give you a buzz. They are stimulants. So I have 30 sleep tips and tricks that I don't have time to give all of them to you today, but I will tell you where you can find them. And in fact, I think I can copy and paste. Yes, I just copied my sleep tips list there, but I'll tell you where you can access those later too. But I am going to go over the top 3. This is number 1 for a reason. Get up at the same time every day and try to keep your sleep schedule as regular as possible. So, you know, since we've been children, we've been told you have a bedtime, it's your bedtime, go to bed, it's your bedtime. Nobody talks about your wake time, when actually that is so important. It sets your circadian clock. And if you're not sleepy at your bedtime, don't go to bed at a bedtime. Stay awake until you get sleepy. Number 2, set the nighttime room temperature really cool, 60 to 68 degrees. Contrary to popular belief, or what sounds kind of counterintuitive, our bodies have to cool down for a good sleep. And when our skin cools down, it signals our brain that, hey, it's time to sleep now. So for somebody who likes it warm all the time, I know that's tough, but it works. Number 3, get outside, get that direct sunlight, especially first thing in the morning. I know in the winter months it's difficult, so that's when you might use a phototherapy light, which is just a bright, specific light that shines on you for maybe 15, 20 minutes a day. But if you can, get outside. It's that outdoor light that we need for that vitamin D and for setting our circadian clock. That's really important. And the same goes the other way. At the end of the day, lower your lights. There's no need to have overhead lights on and have bright things shining at you and looking at your devices up until bedtime, because that's telling your brain it's time to wake up. So that's what I have for you today. There are the 2 sites where you can find the adult tips and the youth tips. And I'm checking back at how many hours. Wow, people got some good sleep last night. Congratulations. That's really good.
I know. I'm impressed that everyone that shared had a pretty good amount. So
Yeah,
uh, it might be that we have a lot of health and safety folks in the audience, but still happy to see it because sometimes we don't practice what we preach.
that is so true.
Yeah, thanks for talking about this today, Susan. It's a really critical topic, and I definitely learned a lot myself. Aside from farming, when you were talking through, what are the cognitive effects of doing an all-nighter, when we think about like college students pulling a lot of all-nighters, it seems, counterproductive even.
It is, and I did that myself, and I know my kids do. I think we're all guilty of it because we think, hey, if I stay up late and study till 2 o'clock in the morning and get up and take the test at 8, I'll have more chance of remembering it, which sounds kind of logical, but it's biologically incorrect.
Well, I have one question, and if there are any others, I think we have just a little bit of time. But a lot of farmers are going to be, moving into harvest season, and I think the big argument is always that, there are no other options. The work has to get done. As the saying goes, make hay when the sun shines. So, what do you use as recommendations when you're talking to especially folks working in agriculture about those big seasons when they may be more fatigued than others? How do they manage that?
I'm sorry, I missed that whole last sentence. You kind of
Oh, sorry.
a little bit. Sorry.
Yeah. How do you talk to farmers about the fatigue they may experience in some of the seasons like fall and spring where their demands are higher?
The busy times, they become shift workers essentially, and they're usually taking on too many shifts to be healthy. And that's a tough one. My best advice is to delegate and not think that you have to be up at all of those crazy hours. Maybe there is someone else who can take a shift. Um, we just really need to get that sleep, nonstop sleep for bunches at a time. Getting 2 hours here and 2 hours there is just not doing what it needs to do for your body, and you're really going to be hurting your health if you do that. So if there's any way to trade with someone, help each other out, that shift work is tough, and it does impact you for the rest of your life. It has been shown that nurses who work the night shift have health problems and have issues that will affect them the rest of their life. There is nothing that we can do afterward to cure what goes down when you miss out on sleep for that long, or when you mess up your cycle for that long. So yeah, hopefully some of those tips in the sleep tips would also help, like stop drinking and eating caffeine after a certain hour. Gosh, there are so many more in there. Just sleep hygiene things that could help a person prepare the body for sleep and tell the body that it's time to sleep.
Those are great recommendations, and I think that's a great spot to end today's talk. And I would recommend everybody check out those sleep tips. I know I have in the past. Our other center over in Nebraska, I know they work really closely with you at CS Cash and really promote that resource. So I encourage everybody to check out those sleep tips and tricks, and follow up and connect with Susan if you have additional questions. But thank you for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me.